Good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Manalo, and I'm with Trepepe Smith, and we're the communications company that's been contracted by the city to help with the public outreach for the redistricting process. So I'm very glad to be here with you this evening. I'm going to be moderating this workshop and helping us to get everything that you all need to know in order to regarding the redistricting process here in the city of South Pasadena. So again, my name is Victor Manalo. I'm with Trepepe Smith, and later on you'll hear from Ken Chalkins from National Demographics Corporation, as well as from Kristen Parks, also from NDC. So this meeting is being recorded. I'm sure that you saw that when you came in, and that is for the purposes, we'll have that later on our website, which I'll show you a little bit later, so that those who could not make the meeting tonight will have be able to go in and have access to all of the information that we're including in this meeting this evening. So just to give you a little bit of context for the redistricting process, and this is a very important process, and the city of South Pasadena believes that everyone should be aware of and should be engaged in this particular process. It is a once-in-a-decade opportunity. This only happens every 10 years as a result of the census, and as you'll see later, there have been some laws that have been passed that affect the redistricting process, and this is going to last for the next 10 years. So it's really important that you are here and that the residents of the city of South Pasadena are engaged. And it is, we recognize that you all are the experts on your community. You are residents of the city of South Pasadena. You lived here. You perhaps you work here, shop here, do a lot of things in the city, and you know your neighborhood, you know your community, you know your neighbors, and we want to get that information from you because you're the experts, and that's very important. Again, you are the experts about your neighborhoods as well. I know in my city, where I live, when I look out the front door, I know whose car is whose. I know when there's a strange car. I know my neighbors that are walking by. I know the people that are walking by that I don't know very well. And I suppose you're all the same, and you know who, everything to know about your own neighborhood. So you are experts in that regard as well. And for those reasons, we need your input, and that input is valuable to the city of South Pasadena in this redistricting process. That's the fourth point. It is valuable and very important. So that's why we're doing these workshops. And it is, again, the intent of the city to, as much as possible, get that valuable and important feedback from you to inform this redistricting process. And your participation strengthens the democracy, and the democracy that's in place here in the city of South Pasadena. Democracy cannot run without the input from those who are governed, and we're very happy that you are here with us tonight. So by the end of this workshop, you're going to be able to identify the remaining public hearings in the redistricting process. We'll be reviewing with you a couple of timelines and show you where you can get access to those timelines so you know what meetings are coming next and what all the deadlines are. You'll be able to, later on, you'll hear from Ken, you'll be able to apply the legal redistricting requirements of federal and state laws to your own community and neighborhood. You're going to get a chance in this workshop this evening to describe to us your community and your neighborhood, and we'll give you some examples of what feedback we've already received from your neighbors, residents of the city of South Pasadena, and how they describe their community and their neighborhood. And hopefully you'll join us, you'll give us some input and present your own ideas and your own definitions of what your community and neighborhood are, so that we can have that as a matter of the record, so that that can be used to inform the redistricting process. And we're also going to show you how to submit your own map. We're going to review some mapping tools with you that are available for you on the city's redistricting website. And by the end of this workshop, you're going to know how to submit your own map. So the schedule for tonight, we're scheduled until 7:30 p.m. And we're going to start off with a review of the redistricting process, legal requirements, and the goals of redistricting. We're going to show you a demographic summary of the current city council districts. And then we'll have some discussion on communities of interest. That's the part where we will open it up to you to provide us with some feedback and input about your definitions, about your community, your neighborhood, that need to be taken into consideration in the redistricting process. Then we will have a mapping tools demonstration. So we're actually going to show you the tools and how to use them. And then we'll open it up for general questions and answer session, and a review with you of the next steps in the process, and review the website so you see where everything is, where you can get information. And then again, we're planning to end around 7:30 p.m. So now I'll turn it over to Ken from NDC, Ken Chalkins, who's going to take it from here and start off with the redistricting process.
Great, thanks, Victor. So this is a quick overview of not only where we have been, but where we're going in the future. The deadline for the city to adopt a map is April 17th, but you need to have at least 4 workshops, public hearings rather, not workshops. We've had 2 of those, and the next one is coming up on February 19th is the deadline to submit a map, but March 2nd is the public hearing. You can see that there. And then our final public hearing is scheduled for March 16th before the deadline. So in between all that, we're hoping to get a number of different maps that we will produce at NDC. We'll produce a number of maps. And in the end, the city council has to sift through them all and choose which ones that they think represents the best map for the city of Pasadena. Next slide. This is, I think, the most critical of the slides in that it basically lays out the rules of the road and gives you the parameters within which the city has to draw maps. The first is the federal law. The federal law under the Federal Voting Rights Act basically says the first part is equal population. Simply means, another way of saying that is one person, one vote. You want to make sure that every district or zone or sub area within a jurisdiction is approximately the same size. And after every census, as people move in and move out and populations change, you have to recalculate that and figure out what the target number is for each district within a jurisdiction. And you cannot get too far afield. And so that's why lines have to be drawn. You'll see us making reference a little later to population deviation. You want to stay within 10% of the most populous district and the least populous district. Beyond 10%, you're going to get a little bit, you're going to have a map that doesn't really pass muster with the federal law. And so that's the equal population. That's the foundational or fundamental part you have to do when drawing maps. The Federal Voting Rights Act then also says, and this is important to talk about it this way, is you're not allowed to dilute the potential for a protected class, which are ethnic and linguistic minorities, to have the potential to get elected. There's no number or percentage listed, and you cannot require, obviously, that some person of a certain protected class gets elected, but you're not allowed to draw a map that would be seen as diluting the potential. So if you had a population that was concentrated, you can't draw a line in a map splits that population, puts them into two different districts, and then thereby diluting their potential. You similarly can't pack them all into one when in fact there would be enough to elect two potentially. The other part is the flip of that is you also can't be seen, quote unquote, gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, we've all sort of think we've heard about it, and it usually applies to political gerrymandering, but you can't be seen drawing maps or districts that circuitously go around to capture people from protected classes or political parties to create a district with a certain amount of folks. A little known fact, the term gerrymandering comes from a former Massachusetts governor whose last name was Jerry, who later became vice president, who approved a map that looked like a salamander. So it was so circuitous, they called it gerrymandering. So you can't dilute the potential, nor can you go circuitously to go and get a population. That's the federal law. Under the California Fair Maps Act, which was passed just a couple of years ago, there are other requirements that you have to follow to make sure that the map holds muster under the law. And these are in order of priority, but you sometimes can't get them perfectly because they play off of each other. The first is contiguity or contiguous. The maps, each district has to be able to touch each other, or a district has to connect to other districts. That one is one of those ones where you can see it, you'll know it when you see it, and if it's not contiguous, then the map won't pass. The second number is a little bit more of a term of art. If I were to ask people what a neighborhood is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, you might be able to identify it, but a community of interest is a little bit more art than science. What communities should be held together or kept together for the purposes of representation? You can define that. You can define a socioeconomic community. You can say a senior community. You can say a geographic community. You can say all kinds of different ways. The key is it has to be enunciated in a way as part of the process so that if somebody challenges the map, the jurisdiction can say, no, these are the communities we were trying to protect. And as such, it's really important for you to think through more specifically than just physical boundaries. What is the community we're trying to protect or that needs representation? The third is identifiable boundaries, and those can be person-made or they can be natural. You can have, as in South Pasadena, certain streets or a park or shopping areas. It can be natural, like a mountain or a river or something like that. But you're well within bounds to call out those identifiable boundaries and say, east of this boundary is X and west of the boundary is Y. But you're allowed to use those in the sort of the dynamic of figuring out what districts get representation. And then finally is the compactness. And again, that's another one that's more like you'll know it when you see it. The rule that we try and say is you can't be seen jumping over one community to get to another. It's very close to what we were talking about with gerrymandering. You can't be seen sort of sliding around and getting over one to get to another. That's not as compact. So you try and get as compact as you can. But again, if there are boundaries that are important, and then there are communities of interest that you're trying to protect, and in order to keep contiguity, you're allowed to sort of work through all these things from the state perspective. Again, you can do all that, but if you don't have equal population, the map won't pass muster. And so you have to work with all of these dynamics to try and find maps that fit. It's quite a creative process. We put the third column there only because these are principles that have been used in the past. You don't want to be seen drawing a map that as a result moves people into different, certain elected officials into different election years or voters into different election years. You try to minimize that. Sometimes it's impossible to do based on the other criteria. Similarly, you try and prevent against, again, cutting out somebody who voted for one person, and then you're now putting them in a different district, and their choice in office was one versus another. Again, you're trying to avoid that after you get through the other 7 that we listed. If you can avoid that, you do. You don't start with those. Future population growth also, if you know And this is where it gets a little tricky, but if you know that there's a certain amount of housing that is going to be built, sticks are in the ground, as they say, or permits have been pulled, and you know a certain area is going to add 500 more units, which is maybe approximately 1,500 more people, et cetera, you are in a position to quote unquote underpopulate that district, knowing that within the next 10 years that's going to fill in. It gets a little tricky because you have to use that logic pretty carefully and make sure that you're doing that with the notion that you know that there's going to be growth there, as it were. And preserving the core of this, again, existing districts, if that's a value or a principle that you hold, you're allowed to use that, again, as long as it holds with the 7 that we mentioned before, the federal law and the state law. Next slide. This is the current district that was drawn a couple of years ago. It's important to note that the state Fair Maps Act was not in place when these districts were drawn. But this is what you've been using for a couple of years. And now, because the census has been counted again, you have to go through and reevaluate this map and determine whether it is balanced and whether it represents community of interest, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see on the left the current elected members of the city council. Next slide. There's a whole sheet that comes with each of our maps. This just represents part of it. That counts a whole number of demographic areas, demographic items, from voter turnout and registration. You can do socioeconomic, you can do home ownership, you can do families, etc. The reason we bring this slide up is the highlighted list is what I was making reference to earlier. So the percent deviation that's highlighted, you can see that District 3, what we first do is we take 27,020 people, which is the total population of South Pasadena. And that's not citizens, that's residents. That's not voters, it's residents. All people, old, young, whatever, citizens, non-citizens. You take that number, divide it by 5, that represents the target for equal population. If you hit that on the nose, that all those yellow lines would be 0. So you're trying to get as close as you can. The current map, you can see that District 3 has 5.7% over that target. And you can see District 2 has 6.07 under that target. It is not simply of just taking from one, giving to the other, and then call it a day. You have to reevaluate where people have moved, how they moved, et cetera, and what the communities of interest are that you're trying to represent. So right now, this is 11.81 outside of the population deviation, which is outside the 10% that I mentioned. So this map, your current map, would not cut the muster here because you are over the 10% deviation, which is one of the reasons that you have to evaluate this map. The other note that I would just bring your attention to is if the population is one thing, but you go down to citizen voting age, and you can see the percentages there of protected classes, Hispanic and African American and Asian Pacific Islanders. Sometimes the voting age is lower than usually it is lower, significantly lower than the overall population. And if you're trying not to dilute that number, you want to be sensitive to the citizen voting age and make sure that those numbers are allowing a population to get elected that should. Next slide. So in a moment, you're going to go through an exercise. The questions really are, and it's a small, compact city, but there's a lot going on in South Pasadena. By the way, I live relatively close, so I shop in South Pasadena, we eat in South Pasadena. There's a lot of activity going on. It's a small area, but there are lots of neighborhoods. And I would ask you in the exercise, what neighborhoods are you calling out? You're going to see what the feedback we've already gotten from the surveys. Where are the geographic boundaries? Is it the hillside? Is it Fair Oaks? Is it Mission? Is it Monterey? Is it the freeway? There are various things you can call out and say it is a neighborhood or it isn't. And if you go to the next slide, please. And overlaid on the neighborhoods, next slide. You then want to ask yourself, are there communities of interest? Are there socioeconomic groups? Are there senior groups? Are there church areas? You've got Holy Family there. Are there school district zones that you want to incorporate in the city map? So the school district has its own reason to do things, but sometimes jurisdictions, cities and counties want to include school district attended zones or others as part of, or church communities, parishes, et cetera, as part of communities of interest that they want to participate. The point is, it's up to the community and the city council to give us that feedback so that we can draw maps that represent those communities. And again, you'll have some time to talk through that in just a moment. Next slide. This is a lot of the feedback. And by the way, not every jurisdiction does survey work. The city of South Pasadena should be commended, reaching out like this, but also reaching out with a survey, pushing it out and getting people's feedback. A lot of these neighborhoods you may look at and say, well, yeah, well, no. But you know what? The fact of the matter is, we heard all of these one way or another. And so when we go to draw maps, we're going to be thinking, where are the homeowners versus the renters? You know, where are the school districts? Where is Los Altos? Where are the various places that we should be thinking about? If any of these ring true in this next exercise, or you want to emphasize one or underemphasize one, please let us hear. We won't take your word as gospel of theirs, but the more we hear about X, and then more and more people say X and X is true, then we're likely going to try and draw a map that represents X in a map. Next slide. So I think, are we switching, Victor? You're going to do this now?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so folks, I'm going to hand it off to Victor to sort of work through this slide. And again, don't be shy. Let's hear from you. Victor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Yes, don't be shy. We, as I mentioned at the beginning in the introduction, this is very important to get your input and your feedback. As we saw on the previous slide, we've already received a number of different comments, suggestions, feedback, input about individuals' ideas, definitions of their communities of interest. You saw around transportation issues, around certain types of housing or developments or neighborhoods. So there are all kinds of ways to define it. We just want to hear from you how you define it. So here are some of the questions we've been asking your neighbors and other residents of the city of South Pasadena. We've been asking them these questions maybe to help spur your own thinking about how you might define your own community of interest. So who is a part of your community? You may be living in a community that has certain groups of people. Where I live here, I live in the city of Artesia, which is in the southeast part of Los Angeles County. That we have, for example, and not many people know, we have a Portuguese community here. We also have a Dutch community. Way back when we were dairy land and dairy farms. There are still unique populations and people in our cities in diverse area like Los Angeles. I just found out not a few years ago that we have a population of Nepalese that have located in my city. So there may be people in your own neighborhoods that you'll want to identify that are part of your community. There may be, what are the meaningful places that your community recognizes or gathers at? Is it parks? Are there parks? Or as Ken mentioned earlier, places of worship? What are some common concerns that you share with a group of people in your community? Are you in a neighborhood that abuts a commercial area in South Pasadena, or a freeway, or some other busy main thoroughfare? Maybe your neighbors are around a park or a school, and you share certain concerns about, say, traffic around the school, especially when school is in session and kids are in school. And I know mornings and afternoons are always very difficult when you live close to a school. So maybe some of those concerns that you share. What are common cultural characteristics that unite a community? What are the common work-related traits that bring a community together? And what is significant about the physical environment? Again, could be parks, it could be streets, or main streets, freeways, anything about the physical environment that might differentiate your community or identify your community of interest. So any of the thoughts or ideas that you have will become part of the record. It will be recorded, and it will be written down so that our demographers can use that information as we are looking at they're looking at the draft maps that come in. So with those questions in mind, or maybe other questions that came up along the way during this presentation, it's now your turn to share with us what you think, any input that you might have about your community of interest. Is that where I'm at now sitting? I don't know if I need the next slide here. But I think that's where we're at. Yes, that's right. So we have a Google Doc here, and we're ready to take some notes. If you would like to give us some input about your community of interest, now's the time, and we can record that. I believe that you can raise your hand. There's the raise your hand feature on the webinar that you can use. And if you do that, I will recognize you so that you can be unmuted and you can give us your input. Sydney, I'm wondering if maybe if we could go back to the slide that had all of the feedback that we already received. Maybe we could leave that up for a second and have, if that's okay. Thank you so much. We'll leave this up for a second. You might want to take a look at that. I know Ken mentioned that when he reviewed the slide. You may want to look at some of the input that we have already received regarding neighborhoods and communities of interest. Take a look at this list, and as Ken suggested, you can say, maybe reaffirm what the input we've received. You can add maybe something that isn't on here. If you have your own definitions of your community of interest or your neighborhood that you would like to add to this, or maybe make a comment on something that that's already been received that's here on the slide that you might want to comment on. So I'll give you a second to review that, and then we can have Sydney bring up the Google Doc again in case any of you want to make some comments on it. Feel free again to use the raise hand feature if you would like to make a comment. Again, we have homeowners and renters, traffic patterns, school districts, Monterey Hills, where there's some older homes, the Mission District, southwest part of Pasadena, and then different neighborhoods that have been identified. So anyone have any additional comments? Anything additional that we should know to add to this list? Any comments that you might have about anything that's on the input that we've already received? Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hands here, so I don't think anyone has any comments at this point. However, there is still time to provide us with your comments. So this is not the last time that you can give us any public comment or input on anything regarding the communities of interest. So just want to let you know this is not the last time. We're trying to give you and your neighbors and residents as many opportunities as possible to provide that input. So unless there are anyone has any comment that they would like to make right now, it looks like we have someone that just joined us. So we may have, you can always, when we get to the question and answer portion at the end, if something comes up and you want to add something at that time, certainly you can mention it at that time. But I think right now we'll go ahead in the process, and I will turn it over to, is it you, Ken, to do the map review tool? All right.
Yep. I'm going to go quickly. Thank you, Victor. And again, if in the middle of all this, if you all have questions, raise your hand, and I and/or Victor can call on you. And in fact, I'm looking at a Q&A. There is, okay, I just got to thank you. There are some tools that you can use online. We're going to demonstrate two of them tonight, but the first one to note, and this is on the website, after the maps have been submitted and drawn, some of the draft maps, this is a very, very effective and easy to use tool. It's called the Interactive Review Map. All the maps will be listed for South Pasadena instead of Lake Forest. They'll be listed on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to click on each map and then zoom all the way in and out based on how, you'll be able to see streets and all kinds of things at a very close level. Because if a map kind of feels right and you're really not sure about it and you want to maybe move a little bit left or suggest a movement a little left, this is the tool you're going to want to use. This you won't use to draw a map, but it'll allow you to overlay all kinds of different data that is loaded in. If it's not loaded in, you can ask us to please load it in and we'll try. And then you can see where that thing overlaps on the overall map. But it's a really effective tool. Next slide. There's also two versions of what we call the paper map kit. This literally is a toolkit that you can print out and take a crayon or a pen or a pencil, and you can draw around certain areas. Those numbers there are numbers of people that you will then eventually count up. And if you'll remember, you'll look at the target number is 5,000 plus, and you'll be able to draw maps of a map that has different districts, and then add up to see how close you are to the population target, okay? In this regard, this one says Visalia, this is, you would be able to just, again, physically draw around. The other thing is you don't have to draw a full map. You can draw a partial map and submit that and just say, here's what I think of District 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you don't want to do the math, next slide, there is a tool that allows you to use the paper map, but then put the numbers in as on the left where you can see the arrows pointing, and then it will populate and show you how close you are to the target. And so it'll add all sorts of things, including this here on the left says citizen voting age population data. All that stuff gets calculated for you. So you can draw it with a map, put the numbers in, and then the Excel spreadsheet will populate it for you. We're not going to go over those today, but that's a map that's online, and there's instructions online as well that can teach you how to do it. The two that we're going to go over today are the next slide. The first is called Dave's Map. It's a relatively simple online tool. You use, obviously, it's something that's called, if we've used something like this before, a paintbrush. But if you've used online tools at all, it's a relatively intuitive system. You log in, sign up, and then you draw maps. The key thing to understand is when you submit, you need to submit your maps purposefully as opposed to a draft map or whatever. When you click submit, it's coming to us as a map. And so make sure that you're sure about what you're doing. You have opportunities to have a draft, hold a draft, and then not submit it. But we want you to make sure that when you submit, it's coming to us. But it's a relatively easy tool that Kristen's going to demonstrate in just a moment. And then the next slide, for those of you who really want a heavy powered or higher powered tool, it's a more complicated tool, but it allows for a lot more variability, obviously with languages, but there's a lot more going on with this tool. Kristen can show the basics of how to use this. And if you do have questions, you can send a note through the City of South Pasadena, and you want somebody to get a hold of you and say, hey, show me how to do this. We can try and find time to do that. But again, if you really want to get a lot more detailed and a lot more complicated, then this is the tool for you. 9 times out of the 10, most of the people that are leaning in and want to do this will use either the paper map or the Dave's map, because it's sufficient enough to get across the kind of map representing the communities of interest and the neighborhoods that you're after. So Kristen is gonna now take over and is gonna demonstrate Dave's and Caliper. And then after that, we'll have some more time for questions and answers. Kristen, it's up to you.
Wonderful. Good evening. Just to introduce myself, my name is Kristen. I work with Ken Chalkins as part of your demographer team for the City of South Pasadena. We are part of National Demographics Corporation, and that is the firm contracted to assist with the mapping. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can. Don't know why it's disabling me. I may need the host to give me that permission, even though I believe I'm a panelist. There we go. Thank you. You got me. Perfect timing. So we're going to start with the redistricting website, because this is where you access the online mapping tools. So I just want to show you very quickly where you can get these tools. So on the City of South Pasadena's redistricting website, you'll click draw a map, and that's going to take you to a page with all of the mapping tool options, including those paper tools, which you can download in different languages, and the Excel spreadsheet. But what I'm going to show you first is Dave's redistricting. This link here will take you to a blank map, a template that you can fill in with your own proposed district boundaries. Both of the online tools do require a user account. So they both are going to require you to log in. All you need is to put in your name and email address to create an account on either of these. So when we open up the South Pasadena blank map, the first thing to know is that there's a lot of data behind the scenes here. So it does take a while to load. So just be very patient. And we suggest you don't try to do this on your phone, but make sure you're sitting on a computer with a good internet connection. So the first thing you're going to see here is that you can move this map around. You can zoom in and out, but you actually can't edit it yet, because it's view only. So you see that sort of at the top of the screen, there's this little purple circle. It says view only. So as long as you are logged in to Dave's Redistricting, DRA 2020, and then you can check if you're logged in by clicking on the little person, right? And you see that I'm logged in as K Parks. As long as you're logged in, you can actually create a copy of this map, which is how you are going to draw your own map. So I'm going to click on the paintbrush and it says make editable copy of this map. So this is the first step. Once you're logged in and you've navigated to the South Pasadena blank map, you're going to go ahead and duplicate it. Now, it's going to take you to your maps page. And you can see I have some other maps here associated with my account. If you don't, that's fine. When you log in for the first time, there should be nothing here. And you see that again, it took a bit of time to load that South Pasadena blank map. Anytime that you want to go back to your My Maps page, this is where you're going to be able to do things like change the name of your map, share your map, publish it so that it's available for everyone to see, and get the link to it. So we can also rename it. So I'm going to rename it instead of copy of South Pasadena blank map. I'm going to call it South Pasadena demo map 13122. Okay. And if you want to put in a description, this is a great place to say, you know, I am attempting to keep together my neighborhood and group it with other similar neighborhoods and put some of that detail in there. And again, you can do that at any point, either before you draw your map or after. So the next thing to do to actually start drawing is click edit. So when you click this pencil icon, edit, it's going to open your map. And you have the ability now to start drawing, right? As soon as it loads, because we do have to be patient with it. Sometimes we'll just hit refresh and that can help. There we go. So as you're looking at this mapping tool layout, you're going to start on the left side of the screen. And what I want to show you is the district selector box. This is the box that you are going to use to choose which districts you're drawing. So right now, District 1 is selected. So if we started drawing, it would start drawing District 1, and it's going to color it this blue color. You also see the target population number here, 5,404. That is the target size for each of the 5 districts you're going to draw. And as you draw your district, it will automatically fill in the population here. And then you can see where it says unassigned, it just says UN. That is how much population you have not yet assigned to districts. And you want to make sure you're assigning every precinct in the city of South Pasadena to a district in order to have a complete map. So right now we have the entire city to assign. I'm going to go ahead down to overlays now, and I'm going to turn on the background map. The background map is going to show me the streets and other features that I'm going to need in order to be able to draw a map. So if we want to start drawing, let's start drawing with, I'm going to click on District 2. And the lines that you see on the map are precincts. So these are relatively large geographic areas. I'm going to click at the top here on block. Now, when I click on block, you don't automatically see the census blocks. Those are the smallest units of geography we can use to assign to districts. However, when you click on block, it's going to give you the opportunity to see the blocks when you click on the precinct. So if I click on the paintbrush, right, and I know I'm going to be drawing something in District 2, I click on the paintbrush and I hover my mouse over, it's going to show me which precinct I'm going to look at. And then when I click on it, it's going to show me within that precinct all of the blocks. So if I wanted to assign the entire precinct to District 2, I'm going to use precinct, but block allows me to click and just assign some of these blocks to District 2, and I can click the check when I'm done. So for the sake of showing you how this works, I'm gonna then just start assigning some things to a district 4. And again, I'm not suggesting any of these boundaries. These are just to show you how the tool works here. So I've assigned some blocks to district 4, and let's assign some precincts to 5 here. So you can see the yellow district here, it's not connected to each other. So it's violating that contiguity principle. And you can see that our deviations are off, right? So what I've done here isn't great. I can use the eraser tool if I want to erase anything that I have done, right? And I just totally erased the district 4 I drew. But the other thing I want to show you is how this tool actually helps you to draw a map by telling you what you're doing right or wrong. So once you assign the entire map to 2 districts, you can click on the Analyze button. And if you scroll down under Requirements, it's going to actually tell you if you are hitting the mark. Did you draw a complete map? Did you assign all the precincts to districts, right? Obviously, I didn't here. Are all of your districts contiguous? No, right? Because I drew that yellow district that wasn't connected. Here's where it's going to tell me that's a problem. Are my districts free of holes? Well, that's good. That's the one thing that I have going for me. And then it's also going to tell you if your districts are meeting that equal population requirement. Did you assign as close to that target population of 5,404 as possible? So this is very helpful when you are getting close to completion of your map to see if you can check off these 4 things. Going back to the map, perhaps we want to fix it. You know, what's very nice about this is really you're just clicking and you click what district you want, the paintbrush or the eraser, and you can just click directly onto the map, right? It really is this easy. And if you're wondering, okay, well, how much population did I add by just clicking these precincts? You go right over to this district selector box on the left-hand side of the screen, and it's going to show you. So in the green district here, I've put in 3,080 people, right? So if I want to hit the target, I still need to add 2,324. Let's see if we can do that by going down to the block level here. So, oops, see, I made a mistake. Want to make sure that I'm adding to the green one. And you can actually watch that number go up as I'm adding blocks to it. $4,315, almost there. Again, I'm not suggesting this as a district. That is not what I'm trying to do here. I just want to show you. Okay, look how close we are. Great. So I have drawn one district, has a hole in it, but it's got pretty close to that target population. I was able to assign 5,400 people to the green district. Once you've assigned all of the map to all 5 districts, you can click on this statistics button here, and it will actually give you a bit of a breakdown. If you're seeing the partisanship information, you want to hide that. The way to hide that, and this is just also helpful if you're ever using this tool, and you just want to double check that you're set up to create a map that's going to be complete and meet the requirements, you can click the gear icon here. And you want to make sure 2 things. You want to make sure that you have this 5,404 number as your target population. And sometimes you can just check and uncheck that box if there's a mistake, and it will fix it. But then you also want to go down and click hide election data and partisan analytics. The reason that's important is if you remember Ken's presentation on the legal requirements, we are not allowed to consider political party when we are drawing district boundaries. That is state law. So we want to make sure that's hidden. This tool is actually also used for congressional redistricting and other things, you know, that are different than our local city districts. So that's why that tool might be there. So then going back to statistics, now we see what we actually want to see, which is the population, the deviation, and then it's showing us that citizen voting age population demographics. So this can be very helpful to if you are interested in certain communities or just getting an overall summary of the map that you have drawn. So with that, I'm happy to pause and take questions on this tool before I show you the next one. I'll stop my screen share for just a moment and see if there are any questions from those who are following along. Again, you can use that raise hand feature, or you're welcome to type into the Q&A box and I will see your question.
Hey, Kristen, if there aren't any questions, I think we can move to the next one.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the slightly more advanced tool now. It is also available on the same place on the Draw a Map page on the City of South Pasadena's website. And this is Calipers Maptitude. So this is another online tool. It's a lot more data rich and it has a lot more going on, but it can also be more difficult to use. Keep in mind, we do have tutorial videos here on the website, as well as a quick start guide. So when I click on this tool, it's going to take me to a page that asks me to log in. So the first time you get here, you're going to want to click new user, and you're going to put in a username and a password. So you do need to verify your email in order to access this tool, but once you do that, you're good to go. And every time you log in, you're going to see this plan manager. This tool is really designed for the power user who perhaps wants to draw a number of maps, right? So you can see all of those maps listed here. And the first thing that you're going to do here is click new plan, right? And you can draw a new plan from scratch, or you can start with the existing districts. I think it's helpful to start with the existing districts. So we click that and we are going to click create. Then you get a chance to give it a name. So again, you know, give it a name that is helpful for you to remember what you're trying to do with that map. And this is also the name that will be visible when you submit it. All right, so you can already see that there's a lot more going on here on my screen. I want to draw your attention to the right sidebar. The right sidebar is your help feature. So this makes this tool a lot easier. It sort of walks you through from creating a new account, creating a new plan, and then how to actually modify the districts in the plan. So this, if you are someone who can, you know, read through instructions and follow them, that help can be very nice to just have on your sidebar there. You can also just click help at the top to make it disappear. So here you are looking at a map of the city, of the current districts in the city, and you'll see the districts labeled with their current deviation from that ideal target number that number of 5,404, right? And then you also will see the census blocks. These are our smallest geography areas, and you do see the population listed in there, which is very nice because it gives you a sense of, before you make changes to this current map, how many people you're going to be moving. So let's say we're going to do something again that you would never do, because I like to do things you would never do in the demo because I don't want to put any ideas in anyone's head. But we see District 3 is overpopulated and District 2 is underpopulated. So what if we took some of District 2 and assigned it to District 3? Again, you would never want to do that because it makes it more imbalanced. But for the purposes of the demo, that's what I'm going to do. So the way that you're going to do that is you're going to go over to the redistricting box here on the right side of the screen. And we're going to make our target, right, District 3. That's the district we're adding to. And you see you get that nice little yellow pop-up that helps you. And it's going to highlight in green what your target is. The source, remember, I'm going to take from District 2. So the source is District 2, and it's going to highlight that in red, right? And then census block is the amount of area that I'm going to select. And so I'm just going to click the pointer icon, and then I'm going to go ahead and select some of these blocks. And as I click them, they'll get highlighted in red. And so you can see exactly how many people are in each block. And you can see that I am moving 298 people, if I choose to do this, from District 2 into District 3. And so the pending changes is kind of your chance before you click, yes, let's do it. That's your chance to preview, right? And I'll add one more even. So here's what I'm proposing to do. I'm proposing to move all of these blocks from District 2 into District 3. And I haven't made the change yet. It's still pending. In order to actually make that change, I have to click the checkbox. And when I click the checkbox, you will see that now the map has updated. And what I have done has made the population imbalance even bigger between these two districts, right? So that's not the sort of thing any of you are going to want to do, but it illustrates how you can move the boundaries using this tool. The Dave's tool gives you more of a blank slate, and this tool gives you the current districts to start with. Now, if I realize that I did something I didn't want to do, I can click this undo button here, and it will undo that change, and it'll take it right back to the proposed thing. So I can click on these to deselect them one by one, or I can just click this X and it's going to clear all of them. So that is how you use this tool. There is a lot here. That's the basics. And I don't want to get too much more into it. But the way you submit your map here on this tool is clicking Share Plan. You can share it with all users, or you can submit it to administrators. I don't want to do either, right? Because I haven't really made a plan here. But if I start working on it and I want to come back later, it will be saved. It will be saved to my maps. So that's another thing. And also there are a lot of languages you can use this tool with. There's the drop-down menu here. I just want to go back really quickly to the Draw a Map page and show you, because I didn't show you, on Dave's redistricting, I want to show you how to actually submit your map. So let's submit my demo map that I made, because this one doesn't have a button to click. So we're going to go back to My Maps, which is sort of this icon here. And I'm going to check the box next to South Pasadena demo map. The first thing I'm going to do is click Publish. This makes the map available to other people other than me. If it's not published, it's really only going to be visible to me. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the checkbox next to my map and I'm going to click share. When I click share, it creates a unique URL for my map. And I can click copy on that URL. And then in order to actually submit this map, I'm going to have to send an email to redistricting@southpasadena.ca.gov. Okay. And I can paste that link into my email, and that's how it will get submitted. If for some reason you don't know how to get the link, you can also maybe send sometimes just the name of it, you know? And so since I published this map, if anyone goes to DRA 2020 and logs in and clicks published maps, and we search South Pasadena, we would be able to find it because I did make it publicly available. This is also how you can find that blank map template, is by using the search here. So I know this is a lot of information. I do want to remind you that this is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the redistricting website. So if you want to come back and rewatch this as you begin to play with the mapping tools, you can do so. I don't see any hands, but I am happy to take any questions. And any of your other presenters are also here to take questions or hear your comments.
Great, thanks, Kristen. I appreciate it. That was a great demo. Man, I feel like going in there and looking through all that data and all those maps myself. Looks so interesting to me. Maybe that's why I'm here. I love that stuff. Anyways, it's not about me. This is about all of you who are here with us tonight. So again, here's a time where you can ask any questions that you have for Ken or for Kristen or for myself about the redistricting process. We went over everything tonight with you. We've gone over timelines. We've gone over the laws. We've gone over draft maps and mapping tools and all kinds of stuff, communities of interest, all sorts of things. So now's the time, if you have any questions, go ahead and use your raise your hand feature, and we would be happy to take any questions that you have at this point. Okay, here's a question about the draft maps. When people post their draft maps, because I'm going to show later on the website that they're going to be able to see the draft maps, but when are they actually going to be posted online?
Yeah, they're usually posted because what NDC does is we take all of the public maps and we process them all so that they're sort of standardized, so that we have all the same demographic reports and all of the same information to post on the website. So that's usually available about a week before the meeting at which they will be presented. So Ken, you might be looking at a calendar and might have some more specific dates, but I'm not sure if you've given the public a deadline to submit their draft maps or not, but I would encourage everyone who's watching today to definitely consider submitting maps very soon, because this process is going to go quickly. And we have already, I should say, received a number of maps. So those have not yet been posted, but if you submitted a map, we do have it. We received, I believe, a number of paper maps and perhaps also some online.
Yeah, we're going to go over the schedule at the end here just to remind people, but yeah, we have to get the maps to the city and to us in time to process, and then get them posted on time for the public meeting so that the city clerk can put everything in time. But we'll go over the schedule again, and the schedule is listed online.
Right. And even though you have maps right now, I think you're going to wait until after the deadline, right? Until once you receive all the maps for that particular deadline, and then they'll be processed and put online thereafter, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so there'll
Very
be a
good.
big batch add of maps to the website prior to the upcoming public hearing.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any? Thank you. Any other questions for our hosts this evening? Again, you could use your raise your hand feature. We'd be happy to unmute you so that you can ask a question of our hosts, or you can post something in M&A as well, as Kristen suggested earlier. Be happy to take your questions. Ken, I know you mentioned this earlier. Here's a question about the how close those population counts have to be between the different districts. I mean, what's the threshold between districts being substantially different?
It has to be no more than 10% difference. So the district with the highest amount can't be, the total between the highest amount and the lowest amount can't be more than 10%. We encourage jurisdictions to go as close to zero as they possibly can, because but once you're south of 10%, you're presumed to be constitutionally okay. That's allowed. And so right. 5,404 is the target. If every district had exactly that amount, that would be zero. Your population deviation would be zero. Right. But anytime it's less than 10% overall population deviation, you're in good shape.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Ken, for answering that question and clarifying. All right, any other questions?
I'll just add a quick rule of thumb for that 10%. We know that the target size is 5,404. So a rule of thumb is if you're drawing your districts, you're looking for the difference in population size between the biggest district and the smallest district to be less than, let's say, 540, because that is the 10% of that target number. So it's a good rule of thumb, thinking, okay, my biggest district shouldn't be much more than 500, 540 more than my smallest district in terms of population.
Great, that's helpful, Kristen. That'll be very helpful, I'm sure, when you're sitting that down there trying to put together these maps. So I know there's a lot of information that we've shared with you tonight, and I know that some folks may be more or less comfortable with using some of the draft tools, but we have a whole set of tools that are available, and some are pretty easy to use, and we just hope that you will take advantage of the opportunity in this once-in-a-decade opportunity to make a contribution in some way to this process, whether it's by identifying a community or neighborhood of a community of interest, or to define your neighborhood, or up into and including submitting a draft map or draft maps. So we really encourage you to continue to be engaged in this process. So if there aren't any other questions at this point, and I don't see anyone's hand up, and I don't see any questions in the Q&A, then I guess we will then go ahead and move forward. And just to remind everyone, again, we've discussed this a number of times already tonight, but just want to let you know, we are still getting closer, as Kristen said, we're getting closer to the end of the process here. So we started in October with our first public workshop, We've had a couple of public hearings, and then this public workshop tonight, January 31st. So the next thing on the calendar here is February 19th, which is the deadline to submit your draft maps for initial consideration on March 2nd. March 2nd is the third public hearing, where the council will review and refine maps and receive feedback from the public and city council. So you still have time to submit maps. You have up until February 19th, and we talked about that just a few moments ago. You have a couple of weeks left, more than a couple of weeks, but February 19th to submit your draft maps. Once that deadline passes, NDC will be processing those maps and getting them ready and then put online before March 2nd, so that you will have a chance to go onto the website and review those draft maps at that time in advance of the March 2nd meeting. That'll be the third public hearing. There'll be another deadline to submit maps after that on March 7th. There'll be a fourth public hearing on March 16th, and then the map deadline and the adoption of the final map by the city council is April 17th. So you still have some time to participate. So we encourage you to share your thoughts. If something comes up after we're finished here this evening, or as you look over your notes, or maybe go back and review this recording, we're always, the city is available and ready to take your thoughts. So you can go to the website, as Kristen showed it to you earlier. Go to the City of South Pasadena website. There is a special redistricting page. If you go to government, you'll see redistricting come up. You click on redistricting, and everything you need to know about the process is right here on this page. So you'll have, there's and everything on here you'll see below says Spanish, Chinese, and Korean, right? So the home page is in those three languages, including English on the home page. It kind of gives you an overview of the process. Then we can go to the calendar. So you can see all the dates that are coming up and that we just reviewed on the previous slide with you. All the deadlines, the public hearings, the workshops, all those things are here. And again, they are in three different languages, 4 languages, including English as well. And then there's a resource page. So if you go to the resource page, what you'll see here are all the recordings of, you'll see the October 28th community workshop. There's a recording there. Oh, and you can see my face there on the side. How embarrassing. And then you can see the public hearing, the 2 public hearings, all the documentation. You can see the community survey input and public comments from November and December, and published news articles. All kinds of resources are on this page for you to review regarding the redistricting process. And then we have the community survey. I just mentioned that there is some information on the resources website, but here is where, if you want to provide some input, there's a survey that you can take here about your community of interest. So when you scroll down on this page, you'll see that there are some questions that will ask you to help you think about, like we did tonight, your community of interest, socio or economic interest. Where's your community located? Can you define it by streets, neighborhoods, addresses, geographic boundaries, everything we talked about tonight. If you think of something and you want to make sure it becomes part of the public record in this process, you can go to that community survey site. Kristen already showed you the draw a map link, where you can actually go to draw your maps. And then, of course, when the draft maps are up, there's also a link to where you can see the draft maps, which will be posted in advance of the March 2nd public hearing meeting. Okay. So that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. And I just want to thank Ken and Kristen from NDC. Thank you so much for being here, for enlightening all of us on the redistricting process. Many times as I hear about it, I learn something new, and I really appreciate it. And you're doing a great service to the city of South Pasadena with your expertise. So thank you so much. And thank you to the city of South Pasadena for hosting this and for allowing me to moderate tonight and to help you to be engaged as residents of the city of South Pasadena. We hope that you will continue to keep track of what's going on in the process as we move forward to for the city to adopt the final redistricting map. You have time to provide your comments. You have time to submit some maps, and we hope that you will do so. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope you all have a good night. See you next time.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.